Dear Dharma friends and all practitioners, today is the 14th of March 2026. We will continue with a new topic in order to encourage everybody to believe in their Buddha nature and continue to practice along with the directions with nothing to ask for, nothing to achieve, and nothing to fear of. And we do the practice clearly, continuously. And the topic for this week is, if your mind is empty, the light from the Buddha nature will shine. So it means when we have no attachment to anything going on in our mind, the sun of the Buddha nature will shining clearly. The light from the sun or the light from our Buddha nature being covered by the clouds or the thinking in the mind. So the Buddha nature light is compared as a light from the sun. When we sweep up all those thinkings in the mind, it's just like we blow away the clouds, which means we have no more thinkings in the mind, then the light will be shine. So as the Sutra just the Buddha Sutra give us an example. It's just like a sun in the universe. There's nothing to hang it up. Even if just a thread to a thin thread to hold up, it still will cover the shining of the sun, and it cannot shine completely, shine 100%. So this is why the Buddha always asks us to believe in our own Buddha nature, practice to sweep up all these interference, all these clouds that covering our sun of the Buddha nature. And that is why we need to ask questions and raising doubts in order to sweep up all of these interference, so our Buddha nature can shine. And if you have any questions or want to share your own experience in practice for this topic, go ahead. Đạt, go ahead. I'd like to ask a question. You usually talk about learning during the practice. as a nun living in the monastery, we need to learn. When we have any retreat, we going to the retreat and learn. Is that the right way of learning, or just come to practice without asking questions? So could you give us the right way to learn? When we said that learning during the retreat it is very important to have this mind. When we study the right Dharma, we need a right view to practice, and based on the right view, we practice correctly, and our belief in the Buddha nature will be consolidated. So for a right Dharma, we need to detach ourselves from our thinkings. So the right learning is to learn without attach ourselves to what we learn. Just using that learning to apply to our practice in order to walk toward our goal. It's when we enter any retreat, we rely on the Buddha, Sangha, and the Dharma to learn the way to practice. Even when we study our learning, even if it have form or no form, we don't attach ourselves to those form or formless of studying. We use that to practice. The more we practice, the more we believe in our own Buddha nature. We use this learning as a mean in order to believe more in our practice and continue to practice on the right path. If we have attachment on all these learning, that will interfere with our practice. So the meanings of learning here is to use the Buddha teaching, the explanation from the patriarchs, and apply that to our practice to make sure that our practice is going on the right path. It doesn't mean that we believe in what we learn, but we need to apply to what we learn to our practice. And if it's helping us, then we continue to practice. But if it's not, then we need to detach ourselves from those thinking. So if we still attach ourselves to those thinking, which means we're not doing the right learning. Is that understandable? Kim Yến, go ahead. I'd like to ask a question. Today, I am doing a practice with you in this temple and listen to the questions from our practitioners. So when the practitioner asks questions about the way of practice or share their experience, when I listen, I heard the questions from a nun talking about, I don't remember the words, but you said some terminologies. It's always realize your Buddha nature, liễu liễu thường minh, or liễu liễu thường tri. This means that we usually chanting at the beginning of the sessions when everything is under the light, it will be clear. And this Buddha nature is in the whole universe, and it's including the sun, the moon, including the wisdom, the stillness, and everything. And all those universe just coming back to our Buddha nature, and that's shining all the dharmas in this universe, and we're using this light in order to practice and pay respect to our Buddha, our patriots. So the meanings of always realize your own Buddha nature is to encourage us to practice until we see our own Buddha nature. In order to see our own Buddha nature, we need to practice and nothing else but practice. And that is the poem from the Buddha, the patriarch, to remind us, just go back to the practice. And that is also the way that an enlightened one show their enlightenment to the Buddha or the patriarchs. So our patriarchs use that in order to remind us to remember our original vow and continue to practice until we see our own Buddha nature. So usually at the beginning of a retreat or beginning of the practice, the nun or the monk will chant these poems in order to remind them to practice. These are just a means that the Buddha and the patriarch used in order to help us to practice. It's just like we don't have any 3 levels of practicing. However, the Buddha used the 3 levels of practicing in order to help different people with different levels to practice. And we need to practice in order to really know the meanings behind these means. But if we don't practice, then we won't believe in our Buddha nature, and we might direct people on the wrong path. We direct them into the way of attachment instead of detachment themselves from all these discriminations of thinking. Is that understandable? Yes. I'd like to ask another question. When I listen to the questions, usually when you listen to the question, you use the Buddha Sutra to help us. And previously, when I practicing the chanting of Buddha Sutra, I don't understand the meanings behind these words. However, after I practice the patriarch, I can understand it more when you use those words from the sutra and explain that to us. So nowadays, many people still using the Buddha Sutra, but they don't understand. Could you please give us some good words of encouragement on this? You don't understand the Buddha Sutra because you have not do the proper practice. And when you're not doing the proper practice, you attach yourself to the words or the explanation from the Buddha or patriarchs. When you practice correctly, which means you detach yourself from all the thinkings, detach yourself from all the ego, then you will see that you already apply what you read from the Buddha Sutra to your practice. And this is the way that we apply the sutra to our practice. It's just like the 6 patriarchs talking about the 36 ways to apply the teaching to the practice. And when you do in the practice, which means when you have the Dharma talk, you never leave the Buddha nature. When we have the right practice and detach ourselves from ego, then we don't attach ourselves to any of these thinking, or we don't attach ourselves to the understanding of the Buddha teaching, but we apply these directly into our practice. It's just like other people try to memorize the Buddha Sutra, and they don't understand anything that they read. This is why the Buddha said that if you don't practice and you just explain the Buddha words, that is going on a wrong path. But if you are practicing and you explain the Buddha words, the Buddha words will be comparable with your practice. So when we do in the practice, all the words from the Buddha Sutra become so simple because they are just the means, just like a finger to point at a moon or the boat to go to the other riverbank. They are not something for us to attach to, but we're using them as a means to see the moon or the means to get to the other riverbank. We don't attach ourselves to them when we got to the other side of the riverbank or see the moon already. So the right way to learn is to apply this learning to our practice, but not attach ourselves to this learning. This is why the patriarch the sutra from the Buddha, if not explained by the enlightened one from the patriarchs, then it can steer us on the wrong meanings. Just like person try to mix the milk with water in order to have more milk. But the more you dilute the milk with water, the less milk it will be. So it's just like that. When we listen to the Buddha teaching or the Buddha Sutra, and we don't practice, we won't be able to understand the Buddha Sutra, and we use our own opinion to explain without the practice, the really knowing of the meanings behind the words. And that is just like diluting milk. This is why when the sixth patriarch, when he listened to the Diamond Sutra, just one verse, and he can get enlightenment, and after that he using the practice in order to understand the real meaning behind these sutras from the Buddha. And when he start to say he start to have the Dharma talk, he never detach himself, he never forget his Buddha nature when he give the Dharma talk. When we don't have the practice, we not familiar with the Buddha meanings. But when we practice enough on the right path, detach ourselves from all these thinkings, then our explanation of Buddha nature is more appropriate. This is why the Buddha and the patriarch always remind us to study, but detach ourselves from all the understanding or knowledge, but apply them to our practice in order to really know the meanings. Kim Hoan. Go ahead. We are the practitioners, the new practitioners. As we study in the Buddha Dharma, we go in against the flow in order to go back to our original place. So the learning is always to apply to our practice. When we don't practice and we just continue to go in a circle of birth and death, our karma is always there to interfere with our practice, and everything happening outside will interfere with our practice, and we don't believe in our own Buddha nature. That's why we don't practice diligently. And some people said that we need to repent our karma in order to practice correctly. And when we practice, we need to make a vow. And when we make a vow, sometimes the karma will appear and interfere with our practice. But in our Patriot Zen, you always telling us to continue to practice, and the more you practice, the more you're familiar with the practice, and then the more you will believe in your own Buddha nature. And when you believe in our Buddha nature, you will believe in our mind, our practice, and we will continue to practice. Could you tell us more about the belief in the Buddha nature? When you don't have a belief in a Buddha nature, when you make a vow, then when you do a practice, you have some suffering, some sadness, and you start to retreat from the practice instead of going forward. And you believe based on the belief of this body, of this thinking, instead of belief in your own Buddha nature. When you practicing and you still said that you need to chant the Buddha names, or you still need to repent your karma in order to practice, or using any means in order to reduce the karma before you practice, and that is just the attachments that you had. And for some people, sometimes they said that now they're working, they don't have time to practice. When they retire, they will practice, and that is the same thing. You need to have enough conditions before you do the practice, and the more you wait, the more you stay away from your belief in your Buddha nature, and the more you stay away from the practice. And when you're getting old, now it's it's too late already. When we're doing the practice, our practice is a way for us to meet all the challenges, and those challenges will be the way to test for our practice, to see if we really have the practice continuously, diligently, or we have the interruptions in our practice. The Buddha and the patriarchs always using the meanings, the ways, the methods, different methods to help the practitioner to go on practice on the right path. When we practicing in the temples, we have the Dharma friends, we have our master to remind us to practice. And that is like we going into the Buddha house, we wearing the Buddha cloth, and we following the Buddha teaching accordingly. So the more you practice, the more you follow the directions, and the more you go on the right path. And you will follow all the precepts and helping all Dharma friends will help each other to walk on this way until you liberate your mind from all of these thinkings, and you will practice on the right path. It's just like when we said when your mind is always have the thinkings and interfere with your practice, just like it said, I will wait until the next life when I turn into a male in order to practice, because these females have too many sins and I cannot practice. And you already your mind already lured you away from your practice. Don't let your mind trick you with these thinkings, and don't let these tricks interfere with your practice or interfere with your way of practice. Always practice diligently. Put down all these thinkings. Trade in all of these trade in your life with this practice. The more you practice, the more you get closer to your Buddha nature, and the more you have the right Dharma to shine in this world. And go ahead and asking. I'd like to ask you about my experience in practice so you can help me. When I practice at a quiet place, I look back in my mind, I feel like the doubt is prolonging. But when I practice in the daily living, I feel like I have the practice, but I don't feel that I have the doubts in my mind. But when I'm doing my job and I try to practice, but I don't have a doubt, I realize that it's just like my practice have no doubts during my job, during my working or interact with the outside. So when we doing the job or interact with the outside activities, how can we practice correctly? Could you help me with this? Normally, we just doing the practice when you don't have to do anything at first, but when you get used to it, you can apply that to your work. But when you have not familiar with practice with our work, and you want to apply that directly into your work or your activities right away, then it's very hard. It's just like the students when when he or she studying in school, he need to memorize the formulas and need to know about the application of that formulas before they can use that to solve the math problem. So for us, you need to use the practice in the free times that you had first, and when you know how to apply the practice in the free times, you master the skill of practice in the free times, then you start to apply that to the job during working, during any activities. And when you can practice without thinking about anything else, then you can apply that to your daily activities, and no situation or no circumstances can interfere with your practice. So if you still attach yourself to the form of practice in doing things or doing activities without practicing that in your free time first, then it won't be going well. It's just like a person who have a disease. They have to follow the prescription from the doctor, and if you forget to take the medication on times, you won't be able to cure your own disease. But if you follow the map of treatment from the doctor, then you will cure your disease. It's just like in Buddha time, we have Bandak, disciple from the Buddha times. He had a problem with his memory. He couldn't remember anything from the Buddha teaching. So I'd like you to help me on this. When I try to practice in doing my job, I try to ask questions and raising doubt, but I don't have a doubt. But when I think about a practice doing doing activities, I just want to go back to the practice. I forgot about my doing things, but when I'm going back to my doing things, I forgot about practice. As Duy Lực Zen Master taught us, he didn't teach us to do it like that. When you doing your work, you don't practice. But when you have a free time, you apply your practice in a free time first. When you get used to the practice in a free times, then you can apply that in your daily living or your job. It's just because you want to have the practice in your daily living, that's why you couldn't do it correctly. This is because you still have something to ask for, something to achieve during your practice. That's why you cannot be success in practice during doing your job, doing your work. Don't try to do it during your practice, doing your job. Yet, when you're not mastering the skill, practicing in your free time. When you try to do both at the same times, then you cannot do it because the distractions is always there. When you doing your job, you forget about the practice, and when you try to do the practice, you forget about the work, and that is not the way that we do in the practice. Just do your work and put out the practice until you get used to the practice in your free times, and then you slowly apply that to your work. Don't try to force that practice in work right away.